The Impaler, also known as Dracula, was a Christian hero. Romania still teaches their children this. They honor him as a defender of their nation and their faith. You weren't taught that. You were taught that he was a monster, a psychopath who impaled people for sport. And there's a reason they told you that story instead of the real one, because the real story exposes something they don't want you to see. The difference between a Christian prince who waged war on soldiers and an Islamic empire that waged war on women and children. Here's what your history books left out. The Islamic Ottoman Empire was waging holy war against Christian Europe. They were swallowing Christian lands, city by city, and Vlad knew exactly what that conquest looked like because he spent his childhood as their hostage. He watched Christian cities fall. He saw what happened to the women, saw boys ripped from their mothers and converted at sword point. He watched his own brother break under the pressure and convert to Islam. But Vlad didn't break. And when he finally took his father's throne, he made a decision that would echo throughout history. Not here, not my people, not while I breathe. You've probably heard about the golden age of Islamic tolerance. Muslims, Christians, and Jews living in harmony, a multicultural paradise that supposedly put those backwards Christian kingdoms to shame. Ask yourself one question. If it was so tolerant, why did Christian populations disappear? Because here's what tolerance actually looked like. The Devshirm, the blood tax. Ottoman soldiers would arrive in Christian villages and demand the priest hand over a list of baptized boys. Boys as young as 6, kidnapped, forcibly circumcised, forcibly converted to Islam, and trained as soldiers used to conquer more Christian lands and steal more Christian children. Hundreds of thousands of boys over the centuries. Vlad watched this empire from the inside. He understood exactly what was coming for his people if he failed. So when the Ottomans sent envoys demanding tribute, gold, and boys for the Devshirm, Vlad didn't negotiate. He impaled the envoys. Sultan Mehmed II, the conqueror of Constantinople, the most feared military commander in the world, had assembled 150,000 Islamic troops to crush Vlad personally. Vlad had 30,000 Christian men and absolute clarity about what defeat would mean for every woman and child in his kingdom. Outnumbered 5-1, he knew he couldn't meet them in open battle. So he made his entire country a nightmare to invade. He poisoned the wells so the Ottoman Empire had nothing to drink, burned the crops so that they had nothing to eat, and drove the livestock into the mountains so they couldn't resupply. Then came the night raids, Vlad's men striking after dark, slaughtering soldiers in their sleep, and vanishing before dawn. Then Mehmed's army reached Targovist and saw exactly what was waiting for them. 20,000 Ottoman soldiers impaled on stakes, stretched out for miles like a forest of the dead. The stench alone stopped the advance. Now pay attention because this is crucial for context. Vlad's cruelty was aimed at soldiers. Ottoman cruelty was aimed at civilians. The men on those stakes were combatants, soldiers who had participated in the rape, enslavement, and slaughter of Christian women and children. And what did Ottoman cruelty look like? When Constantinople fell in 1453, Mehmed's soldiers were promised 3 days of lawful plunder. Eyewitnesses documented what followed. Tens of thousands of civilians enslaved, women raped in the streets and inside churches, nuns violated on altars, young women stripped naked and sold in slave markets, the elderly slaughtered wherever they tried to hide. The Ottomans made war on women and children. Vlad made war on warriors, and it worked. It worked. Mehmed II, the man who had never retreated, the conqueror who had broken the 1,000-year walls of Constantinople, turned his army around and went home. One Christian prince, outnumbered and outgunned, broke the will of the most powerful military force on earth. The women and children of Wallachia didn't end up in slave markets. Their sons weren't marched away to be forcibly converted to Islam, because one man made the cost too high to pay. For 400 years, Vlad was remembered as a defender of Christendom. Pope Pius II praised his military victories against the Turks, and Rome sent funds to support his campaigns. He built churches and monasteries, strengthened Wallachia's economy and legal system. He was a Christian hero who stopped an Islamic invasion, and everyone knew it. Then, in 1897, a British novelist named Bram Stoker needed a villain for his Gothic horror novel. He'd never been to Romania and knew almost nothing about the real Vlad, just the name Dracula and some old stories about cruelty that had been passed down and stripped of their context. Dracula wasn't even a villain's name. It meant his father was a member of the Order of the Dragon, a Christian knightly order sworn to defend Europe against Islamic invasion. The name literally marked him as a defender of the faith. But now a Christian knight had become a vampire, and a defender of Christendom had become a symbol of evil. Entire generations have grown up thinking Dracula means monster instead of dragon knight. Meanwhile, the Islamic Empire that raped nuns on church altars, stole children from their mothers, and enslaved entire populations, Hollywood and our sanitized Western history books call it a tolerant, multicultural society. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness. Isaiah 5:20. Let me be clear. I am not saying we should be impaling enemy combatants on stakes. Christianity has done more than just defend Christian lands. It's made warfare itself less brutal over the centuries. The very reason we can look at certain acts of war and call them cruel is because Christian values shaped our conscience. For most of human history, cruelty to the conquered wasn't an atrocity. It was just Tuesday. But if we swallow the narrative that Christianity was uniquely cruel or imperialistic, we erase the men who come before us, men who fought and bled and killed so that we could live as we do today, men who held the line against empires that would have enslaved our ancestors and erased our faith from history. Romania teaches their children that Vlad was a hero. They know their history. They understand that sometimes defending the innocent requires being terrifying to those who would harm them. So yes, whenever possible, live at peace with all men, Romans 12:18. Turn away from evil and do good. Seek peace and pursue it, Psalm 34:14. But if that is no longer possible, if the innocent are threatened and the oppressors will not relent, then Scripture gives us a different command. Rescue those who are being taken away to death. Hold back those who are stumbling towards slaughter. Proverbs 24:11. Vlad understood that command, and because he did, Christian Europe survived. Learn your real history. Honor the men who made your existence possible.